As a new sales rep, you're going to make mistakes. Congratulations. We've all been there. We've all made the mistakes. And sometimes we make the mistakes because we don't know that they were mistakes in the first place. But after this episode, I'm going to tell you 10 things that you should not do. You should avoid. And I hope you don't make them like I did. Hey everyone, welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today and have this conversation. I want to help you as a seller because I've been down the same road that you are embarking on, and I've made the mistakes, and I see countless sales reps make these mistakes over and over again, and that's why we have a podcast to help them, but also to learn from other people who have been down that same road, like my guests who share their examples. And over the years of teaching sellers and coaching sellers and working with organizations, I see these common ones, and I want to point them out. 10 of them today. I'm going to share each one. I'm going to share why you should avoid doing this and what you can do to do better in those scenarios. And by the time we're done, you're going to be in for a treat. And if this is your first time listening to us or watching any of our videos, I ask you to go ahead and hit subscribe and hit the chime as well. So whenever we produce a new episode, listen, you're going to be the first to know and you'll be able to dive into the content right away. The first thing we're going to talk about, the very first thing you must avoid, when I ask buyers this question, they tell me is a sales rep that's pushy. A pushy sales reps. Pushy sellers are the ones who you probably are the ones you hear get associated with being used car salespeople, where they feel they're trying to trick the buyer into doing something. I mean, newsflash, the buyers nowadays, they're more educated. The buyers are coming with a little bit more prepared, and the buyers kind of understand your tactic because you're not the first sales rep to do this to them, to try to trick them with your new strategy, your Ben Franklin close, or today's the only day, or we have only until X amount of time. And I know you're trying to put some urgency in there, but it kind of come across as a little bit tacky, and your buyers can sniff that stuff out. And since the buyers have many different options these days, they don't have to stick around with you. They can go somewhere else, and oftentimes they will neglect to do business with you and go find somebody else who can be more of a consultative seller, somebody who could be more of a can educate them, somebody who knows a little bit more about what they're doing, as opposed to somebody who's just trying to push them into an option. And usually the pushy sellers are the ones who are trying to hit their own deadlines or their own quota, so they abandon the whole idea of empathy, and they're only focused on themselves and not actually on the buyer. Point number 2 ties very closely with number 1, is not listening. When I say not listening, you've heard the whole adage before that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And in that, we need to make sure that we listen twice as much as we speak. There's a concept that I've learned from one of my trainers in the past that he taught that we should be talking as a sales rep, depending on the situation, anywhere between the buyer should talk about 60 to 70% of the time. The sales rep is about 40 to 30. And my friends over at Gong had some studies that kind of back that up. And what this looks like is not that, as a new seller, sometimes you think if you're talking a lot, that means you're convincing more. And the more you're saying, it's going to be a better chance of them saying yes. In actuality, that will backfire. What typically happens, though, with great sellers who know how to sell effectively, these sellers will ask effective questions. When you can research and you can come prepared with questions that the buyers will have to think about and respond to, or the buyer feel that you're talking or engaging with them and they're able to answer questions about their business because they love talking about themselves, then you're in a good situation. And that's how you can talk less, the buyer will talk more, and the buyer essentially will tell you how to sell to them. Third thing, tell me more about your business. Tell me about your business. I absolutely hate this one when people try to sell to me. And also the same thing with my buyers. When I try to, as a new seller, to tell them, tell me more about your business. Listen, there's so much on the web. There's so much information out there. And if I have to educate you about my business, I don't want to waste my time with you because, again, you have a lot of competition. You have other people that are out there. You're not the only game in town, and I know I can find somebody else. And you might say, well, Donald, I don't know about their business. Well, let's ask different questions than just tell me about your business. And the way this works is that you call into the buyer says, yeah, I'm interested in talking to you. And then you say, well, tell me about your business. tell me, Donald, about what you do and so forth. But again, if you were to go to my website, you'll see that blasted right over it that I'm a sales trainer, that I work with organization. You can read about on my About Me page and learn about me and the team. You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can see some information there. And you'll quickly understand what I do and who I serve. Now, what a better question could be, if you sold a CRM, you might say, Donald, I see that you're in sales training and that you work with organizations. What's the biggest challenge you're having right now with your current CRM? That's way much better because now you're focused on your problem and you're giving me some details. Simple example, right? So don't go to anyone and say, tell me about your business, because I ain't going to tell you. Figure it out. Number 4 is lying. Nobody likes a liar, and especially your prospect when they're trying to find someone who can help them solve a problem. When a sales rep lies, they can figure it out. And I'll give you one that people typically will say as a seller. You kind of know your price. You kind of understand where your ballpark might be. And you can figure out different ways of maybe maneuvering around this question. But when a sales rep when a buyer asks you as a sales rep, well, what's the price? What am I looking at? Instead of you saying, well, I don't know. Yes, you kind of do know. And even though the company may be you need to finagle a little bit sometimes to give approximation, your product is not going to be a wide disparity from $1 to $500,000. Maybe give them a ballpark. Say, great question. I could give you that exact answer after we get a chance to find out a little bit more about your business, but you're looking anywhere between X and X. Is that what you're looking at? Your ballpark. And it might say, yeah, that's right within our sweet spot. I typically will give them, I know, because if you're looking for sales training, it really depends. If you're looking number for your team members and so forth, but you're looking anywhere between X amount of thousand and X amount of thousand. Is that what you're looking for? Is that within your budget range? They might say, yeah. And the reason, again, because the buyer have done some research typically. So they're trying to, trying to figure out if they can even spend the money or have the right amount of money to invest in your organization. Maybe they're one of people looking for the lower end training. They're just trying to get the basic stuff. Well, we're not going to be a good candidate because we don't play around with the lower end folks. So it's the same concept that the buyer is looking at. If you're going to buy a car, it's like going to maybe the buyer doesn't understand the different prices. You see the different cars out there and they're thinking, if I go to a Mercedes dealership, it's going to be the same as a Toyota dealership. No, just let them know. And I like to do this because I don't want to waste my time. Some of you might think, well, I'm going to try to convince them that I'm going to buy from us. Well, I want to help the buyer make a decision that's going to be in their best interest and that are going to be a good customer for me. If you're too cheap and you can't invest into solving a problem for your organization and I have to try to force you into making a purchase with us, then what's going to happen is that those clients tend to be the one that complain a lot as we continue to do business. The clients that are a sweet spot for us, they don't complain, they enjoy, they recognize the value, and they continue to go forward. But obviously, you want to make sure you give value first before you just throw out all the pricing. But that's just one of the strategies I see, one of the places where I see that salespeople lie. Another thing that I see sometimes they lie about is that, well, I have to go talk to my manager about that. Nobody wants to hear that stuff. It feels sometimes like you're being deceptive. Just tell them, or if they tell you a problem and then the buyer brings up a concern, and then you don't want to lose them, so you start to lie and tell them whatever they want to hear. Just be honest. Just say, Madam Buyer, Mr. Buyer, that's a great question. I do not know the answer to it. I will research it, though. I will go internally. And especially as a new seller, you can do that. And I've learned that practice when I was a server at a restaurant. I didn't understand some of the things on the menu when I first started off. So they told me, and I used that ever since my restaurant days all the way to B2B software sales to sales training, where I would tell them, I don't know the answer to that one, but I will research and I'll go get the information. May I set up a time to talk back to you? And usually the buyer would feel that if you're being authentic and honest and genuine, you can't say that for every question, though. But if you're being authentic and genuine, the buyer is going to recognize that and say, no problem, and cut you a break. The fifth one is not taking no for an answer. And I know you're probably saying, well, Donald, I got into sales because I want to be able to help people and I have to be creative and I have to figure out ways to help them to buy. My job is to get kind of like sports. Look at baseball. Not every swing that the batter takes turns into a home run. Sometimes they're just trying to hit the ball to get on the first base, or maybe they're just trying to get a line drive, or perhaps they do hit a home run, but it's not every swing. And sometimes they strike out, and that's why you have batting average. So with your prospect, obviously you want to get the best batting average, so to speak, when you're talking to a prospect. But sometimes you're not going to get them. And when a buyer says no, obviously the first time you don't necessarily need to drop. You want to figure out, I totally understand that you're probably not interested right now. Out of curiosity, may I ask why that is? Maybe they say, well, we just don't have the investment, or our company is going through a rough time, or we're looking at new leadership. Great. If that's the case, let's come back to another time. And especially if you're cold calling, doing cold outreach, when a buyer says not right now, usually it really means probably not right now. They're probably tied up with something else. So if I could set up a time, however, for another time, that typically works. But being just pushy and just not taking no for an answer, listen, it's not a pretty thing. And you may think that you're just being the greatest seller in the world. It's a turnoff. And sometimes us as buyers will then just block your email or block your phone number and not want to hear from you again. So in the interim, though, if you want to look at something else that you should do or something better you should do, what I typically ask people, hey, I understand that right now is not a good time. Is there another time that we can connect for a conversation? I imagine you're probably busy right now. I know I called if to tell you, Donald, it's not good right now. Hey, I totally get it. I called and interrupted your day. Is this something you're kind of interested in? Yeah, I'm interested, but it's just not a good time right now, Donald. Perfect. Let's set up a time and I can come back. Or I can set up a time and talk to you again. But if I'm doing that to my buyer, the buyer's going to know that I actually care for them. I'm listening, and I recognize that their day is important as just as much as mine is. Number 6 is also a very, very important one. Not knowing the buyer's true needs, or not being able to figure out their true need. And what I mean by that is that you don't necessarily need to be a sidekick, but sometimes when a sales rep meet with a buyer, if the sales rep just sound totally clueless, like she or he doesn't understand how to solve the buyer's problem, or don't know anything about their business, or don't understand how the solution can really tie and help the buyer, then they're going to quickly push you out. And especially as a new seller, maybe you don't truly grasp everything right away. The thing, though, you need to do is understand the basics. You could do this by looking at case studies. I'm a big fan of case studies, and I'm sure your company has a case study or two of how you've solved a problem for a buyer in the past. Read and see what the problem the buyer had and the solution that your company implemented. And if you don't have any customers or you don't have any case studies, look at your competitor. Go to their website and see what testimonials they have, and see why. Look at some of their training, their testimonial videos, or their case studies. What do their buyers say about them? What are some of the challenges they solve for their buyer? If you can understand that and understand how you can solve a problem for a buyer, that's going to be very, very helpful for you. It's going to be critical towards your success. The last thing a buyer wants is to deal with somebody who's not knowledgeable in their problem. Make sense? Again, I told you, you can be forgiven if you let someone know, yeah, I am new to the industry, or I don't know that exact answer, and I will get that for you. Then go and find that information, or bring somebody else on the call with you that's a little bit more technical who can tie that particular problem. When I sold software, I didn't know everything about the finance department and how they operated, but I asked questions. And then I also brought people, some of my technicians, on the calls with me, and I guided them, and they were able to give the answers to the buyers. And I was honest with folks. I wasn't trying to lie. I wasn't trying to trick anyone. But if I didn't understand the buyer's business, though, I saw how that could quickly turn them off. So I made sure I went ahead and found out how could I understand their business? How could I truly understand their pain? How could I understand their needs? And the more I understood their needs, the more I understood their pain, the more I understood their difficulty, that then translated into me having a good dialogue, or bringing somebody on the call with me to help me have a good dialogue with them. Number 7 is being late for meetings, not keeping your word. Sometimes you will stack meetings back to back, and it's not pretty when you meet with a prospect and you set up an appointment with them and then you show up 5-10 minutes late for that. Recognize that your buyers are busy. They're not just sitting there waiting for you. They have lives and they have business that they're running. So my food for thought is with this is that you need to make sure you become really diligent with your schedule. You need to understand how long a typical meeting takes, and you need to have buffers in that. So let's say you have a meeting with a prospect, budget that meeting for 45 minutes as opposed to 1 hour. Maybe if you budget it for 30 minutes. But if I have another meeting, I'm not going to put that meeting right there on the 45-minute hour. I'm going to put it, a 45-minute spot, I'm going to put it on the hour. So if I met with you at 1 o'clock and I have a next meeting with my prospect, I'm going to have our meeting end at 1:45 so that I can prepare for that 2 o'clock appointment. That allows me to jump in and be a little bit earlier, especially if I'm using Zoom, or if I'm traveling, I need to budget travel time into that meeting. So let's say if I am meeting with you at 2 o'clock, and I have a meeting at 1 o'clock, and it takes me 30 minutes to get across, or 15 minutes to get across to town to your meeting, I'm going to budget that 30-minute window just so I can make sure I'm prepared. So I'll leave my first appointment at 1:30, give enough time to get there, and then I'll come and meet with you, and I'll be there early. Now, don't get to an appointment way early, too. Sometimes you find people there 20 minutes early, and the client feels like, why in the world they're here so early? I have to have somebody entertain them. My recommendation, 10 to 15 minutes, about 15 minutes before a meeting is fine. If you have to set up stuff, tell a client that I'll get there a little bit earlier. If somebody can connect me to your conference room and I can set things up, then so be it. If you're doing stuff via Zoom, obviously you don't need to do that. You're just telecommuting. Then make sure you just have that, just a little window. I'd like to be there before the client meets if I'm doing a Zoom meeting and I'm hosting it. Let the client come into the meeting rather than the client go and wait for you to come in. But don't show up late and don't miss the appointments. And it just looks unprofessional over time. Number 8 ties very closely with being late to a meeting. It's not keeping your word. So let's say, for instance, if I gave you my word that I was going to bring some information to a meeting, or I was going to send you certain information after the meeting, I must keep that, because again, if I don't, I get tainted by to the buyer that this person is someone that doesn't keep their word. This person is not being authentic. And if I'm not keeping my word, if I'm not living up to what I promise you, then what do you think will happen in the buyer's eye? The buyer will think that if they're not doing this now, what is it going to be like when they have to, we're clients of them, when they don't have to impress us anymore? Are they going to be super thorough? Are they going to be willing to give us the information on time that we ask for them to give us? Are they going to provide the details that we need? And it usually will turn out that the buyer gets a little turned off with it. I'm sure you could probably get forgiven once here, and so, here or there twice maybe, but it's just not a good practice. I rather come and impress. I like the idea of to underpromise and overdeliver. So if I have something that I need to give you and I say, yeah, I'll make sure you get this by tomorrow evening or tomorrow afternoon, then that gives me enough time in case things go crazy and I could send it to them in the morning, then that gives them a pleasant surprise. Like, oh, I was expecting this later. Wow, this came sooner. Thanks, Donald. I appreciate that. Of course, man, I'm here for you. I'm looking out for you. So make sure you keep your word and make sure you do what you say you're going to do. Number 9 is overselling. And I've seen this oftentimes with new sellers. You get a prospect, they're interested, you had a conversation, and now all you have to do is just shut up and seal the deal and schedule the appointment or get them the things that they need. But sometimes the sales reps, especially when they're new, feel that they have to tell the buyer everything about their product. It's kind of talking, like the idea of talking too much, but they start overselling. Well, let me tell you about this feature as well. Let me add this feature to you. Let me tell you about all of this. And usually, again, if you do your job right and you understand the needs and you understand the problem and you solve for that problem, you give them value in that particular thing, the buyer will then recognize that you know what you're talking about and they'll be convinced. They'll feel confident that you can continue to help them. But if you feel that you need to tell, say they really want feature 1, but you feel that you need to talk about feature 3, 4, and 5 to feel complete, it's not a good thing because you're focused on yourself again. If they only need feature 1, then sell them feature 1. If you're selling a house and they just really like a great garage, don't focus on the bedrooms. Show them the nice garage. If you're selling a software and they want to have something that connects to their Gmail easily, then show them that part and show them that thing. Don't show them your SQL database and all of that other stuff, which I don't understand. We don't need to know that. Solve the problem right at hand. Give me what I want and don't try to oversell. And the final thing that new sellers sometimes neglect to do is learn. And I don't think you're going to have that problem because you're here watching a video. So I'm sure you're willing to learn. I'm sure you're willing to improve. But if you're a new seller and you just feel like you know it all, you've been there before, you've experienced all of this over your course of 1-2 months of selling and read a couple books, you're in for a rude awakening. What I came to learn as a new seller was the being willing to learn from everyone in the company, even the people who weren't salespeople and the people who weren't the greatest sellers. I would have conversations and figure out what they do that makes them that work, or find out what drives people. And in my organization, I went to different departments and found out what they did and how they function. I listened to books. I read different case studies. I also watched YouTube videos and listened to podcasts. I did all of this stuff because I recognized my gap and I didn't know enough and I needed to learn and I wanted to. And because of that, I was willing to continue to grow. And after that, now we produce all of these episodes. That's another great reason. I continue to grow every single day by producing these videos and these episodes because it helps me to go back on things that I've learned, helps me with things that I'm reading and research and preparation, and also on the best practices that can help you. So all of these things, I share them with you because I want to help you. If you're first time watching our channel, again, I ask you to go ahead and hit subscribe. If you enjoyed this stuff and you're a return watcher or listener, I thank you so much. And what I would like for you to do is to make sure you implement these things. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. You can find me easily. Just go search on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly, and I'll pop up this handsome guy and I'll be your friend. As always, I'm here to share value with you. I want you to succeed. I want you to find more of those ideal customers. I want you to know what to say when you actually meet with them. I want you to close more deals. But most importantly, I want to challenge you each and every single day to go out and do big things. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video today. If you enjoyed the content, I ask you to go ahead and hit that like button, that thumbs up in the bottom right-hand corner. Also, to make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. This way, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest sales strategies, latest tools, and things that are going to help you to not only find more prospects, but to close more deals. Thanks so much.